It begins with silence, a heavy, suffocating silence broken only by the distant cough of someone unseen in the dark. In a small medieval town, lit by the faint orange glow of oil lamps, doors are shut tight, windows barred with boards. Nobody wants to be noticed tonight. And then a knock that sends shivers down spines. The door creaks open just enough for a terrified woman to peek through, and there he stands, cloaked in black, hat wide-brimmed, and a long, grotesque beak jutting out from his face. A figure so alien it could have been a demon itself. A plague doctor. To the people of the 14th century, his arrival was both a curse and a salvation. He was summoned only when the disease had claimed yet another victim, when hope had withered and families no longer prayed for recovery, only for mercy. His very presence meant death was already inside your walls. But why the bird mask? Why the dark silhouette that stalked the streets like a raven searching for carrion? To the uneducated eye, it looked like a horror born from hell. But in truth, the mask was not meant to terrify. It was meant to protect. The beak, stuffed with herbs, spices, and sometimes vinegar-soaked sponges, was a primitive filter. Doctors believed the air itself carried corruption, the dreaded miasma, or bad air, that seeped into lungs and poisoned blood. By breathing through this strange contraption, the plague doctor thought he could cheat death. But make no mistake, his mask was no miracle. He was not a savior. Often, he was nothing more than a witness, walking house to house with a ledger in hand, recording the names of the doomed. Yet, as eerie as his mask may seem to us today, for those who saw it firsthand, it was a herald, a final warning that life as they knew it was about to end. And in that midnight knock, one could almost hear the whisper of the Black Death itself, ruthless, invisible, unstoppable. The year is 1347. Ships arrive in the bustling ports of Europe, carrying not only spices, silks, and travelers from the East, but also rats. And clinging to those rats are fleas, tiny parasites carrying the deadliest disease Europe has ever known, the bubonic plague. Within months, the sickness spreads like wildfire, first the ports, then the towns, and then mercilessly the countryside. Villages vanish. Cities are emptied, and mass graves scar the land. The death toll mounts so fast that priests stop reciting last rites, and grave diggers refuse to collect the bodies. People whisper that it is God's punishment that demons walk the earth. Entire communities accuse Jews of poisoning wells. Others scourge themselves in the streets, hoping their blood will appease divine wrath. But the truth is simpler and more terrifying. The plague is unstoppable because no one understands it. Medicine, as medieval Europe knows it, is helpless. Bloodletting, charms, prayers, nothing halts the disease. And so, out of desperation, towns begin hiring a new kind of figure, the plague doctor. These men are not healers in the modern sense. Most are not even trained physicians. Some are failed surgeons, others mere opportunists willing to risk death for a fee. Communities draft contracts, promising doctors gold, food, and housing if they will stay within infected towns. Many accept, not out of heroism, but because they see profit in the misery of others. And soon, their image becomes etched into history. Black cloak, cane gloves, and that haunting mask. Yet, beneath the shadow of this mask lies a truth few dare to say aloud. The plague doctor was not there to cure. He was there to count the dying. The costume of the plague doctor looks almost theatrical to modern eyes, but to medieval minds it was cutting-edge protection. Picture him preparing for his rounds. He slides into a long waxed overcoat, the fabric treated with oils to keep away moisture. Thick leather gloves cover his hands, boots pulled high to seal his legs. A wide-brimmed hat crowns his head, not just for status, but to warn others of his role. And then the mask. The mask's hollow eyes are covered with glass discs, allowing him to peer out, but shielding him from contaminated breath. The beak protrudes several inches, stuffed with aromatic herbs, lavender, mint, camphor, cloves, even garlic. Some doctors experimented with vinegar-soaked rags inside the beak, believing acid in the air might neutralize the poison. The cane, often mistaken for a walking stick, served a darker purpose. It was used to prod the sick from a distance, to inspect buboes without touching flesh, and grimly, to ward off desperate families who reached out, begging for help he could not give. The entire costume transformed him into a figure out of nightmare, half man, half carrion bird. And perhaps that was fitting, because like a vulture, the plague doctor hovered where death was certain. Children fled at the sight of him. Families wept when his shadow darkened their door. He was not merely a doctor. He was a specter of doom, dressed for war against an enemy no one could see. And yet behind this terrifying facade, the mask was tragically ineffective. The Rayol killers were not the bad air, but the fleas and rats. Tiny assassins slipping under doorways, immune to herbs and vinegar. While doctors believed they were protected, many fell sick anyway, joining the endless procession of the dead. The door creaks open and the stench is unbearable. The plague doctor steps inside a dimly lit room, cane tapping the floorboards, his mask filtering little of the foulness that hangs heavy in the air. A family huddles in the corner, their eyes wide with fear. One of them, a boy no older than 10, coughs violently, black flecks of blood staining his lips. His neck bulges with swollen buboes, grotesque lumps that pulse beneath fevered skin. The doctor approaches cautiously. He does not rush forward to comfort the child, nor does he offer tender words. Instead, he leans in just close enough to observe, then scribbles something in his ledger. His job is not to heal, it is to record. He prods the boy swelling with his cane, notes the smell of rot, then steps back. Behind him, the parents plead, "Can you save him? Please." The doctor says nothing. Sometimes he mutters about applying poultices or lancing the buboes to drain pus, but he knows such treatments rarely work, and often he has no remedies at all. When he departs, he leaves behind despair and silence. Families soon realize what his visit means. Their loved one is already marked for death. In some towns, the plague doctor's role expanded. He might issue orders to quarantine the household, or arrange for carts to collect the dead at dawn. But inside those sick rooms, he was not a healer. He was a witness, cloaked in black, bearing testimony to human suffering on a scale unimaginable. To the living, his silence was more terrifying than any diagnosis, because if the plague doctor could not help, then no one could. One of the most chilling aspects of the plague doctor's role was his book. Every town that hired him expected meticulous records, names of the dead, causes of illness as he perceived them, numbers of households infected. These ledgers were not just bureaucratic tools. They were chronicles of apocalypse. Imagine the doctor hunched over parchment by candlelight, ink-stained fingers moving steadily across the page. Entry after entry. Maria, age 16, fever and buboes. Father Anselm, found dead at altar. Entire household gone, buried in mass pit. The lists grow longer with each day, until pages resemble funerary scrolls. For historians today, these ledgers provide rare glimpses into the scale of devastation. But for those who lived it, the act of writing felt cruelly detached. Families saw the doctor as cold, uncaring, a man who treated their suffering as mere numbers. Some even accused him of working with death itself, of being a grim accountant who fed names to the grave. Yet, from a different view, these records were invaluable. They became the only official memory of entire villages that vanished, the last trace of thousands who left no grave markers. Without the plague doctor's ledgers, much of Europe's darkest chapter would be a blank silence in history. But at the time, no one saw them as historians. They were simply the bearers of doom, men who came with ink and cane instead of curers. And so, the plague doctor's image grew darker, his reputation twisted into something far more sinister than any physician of flesh and blood. He became the human face of death itself.